Welcome. In this video, we'll talk about the latest article published by the Catalonia Working Group on Central Banks, covering the history of the Taula de Canvi of Barcelona, Europe's first public bank. CACEB is a space for discussion about the past, present, and future of banking in Catalonia and the future role of a central bank. We can access the website through the link in the description, where you can see the reports published here below. To access the article, please go here and then here. This report takes a look at the institution from a monetary perspective, emphasizing the central banking functions it fulfilled in the financial system of Barcelona. To understand the context in which it emerged, let's begin by discussing the medieval financial system, which appeared around maritime trade and commercial fairs, important elements of economic life in the late Middle Ages. In this map, we see the prevalence of fairs from the 12th to the 15th century. The area of Flanders and Champagne stands out. We are interested in the Mediterranean arc around Barcelona, given that the city traded mainly with cities like Genoa, Pisa, Mallorca, and Valencia. Certain merchants who frequently exchanged coin to conduct their business using the local currency became specialists in financial matters. The activities of these money changers at fairs developed into the first banking practices, which consist of two fundamental activities. First, the transferability of deposits, and second, bank credit. Let's consider the example of a merchant who arrives in Barcelona with foreign coins and wants to buy goods from local sellers. To do this, he approaches the money changer and gives him coin. In exchange, the money changer writes in his books that the merchant has deposits in his account. Now the merchant approaches the seller to buy the goods. In exchange, the merchant transfers deposits from his account to the sellers as payment. This is the first role of banking, the transferability of deposits. Let's move to the second aspect, bank credit. In this second example, we can see that the merchant arrives to Barcelona without coins. If he wants to buy goods, he will have to do it on credit, that is, by getting into debt. He agrees with the money changer that he will grant deposits to the seller, and in exchange, commits to returning the money with interest. Thanks to bank credit, exchanges can be made without the need to hoard coins beforehand. Throughout the 14th century, the fiscal needs of the city of Barcelona grew as its economy expanded. Interest payments on the municipal debt were cumbersome for the public treasury of Barcelona. In order to lighten the burden, in the year 1400, a group of citizens proposed the establishment of a public bank. The Council of 100 debated the proposal, which consisted of creating a public bank that would allow the citizens' deposits to be used as a source of financing the city's expenses, overcoming the problem of mounting interest payments. The following year, in 1401, the creation of the Taula was approved. The institution differed from private banks in some key respects. The first one of these is that it was of public ownership, and the city guaranteed the repayment of all deposits. Second, their managers paid special attention to the quality of the coins they accepted, unlike private banks. Lastly, it was the fiscal agent of the city. Since its founding, the Taula de Canvi was a major source of funds for the city government of Barcelona. Instead of relying on the issuance of public debt, the city could make the necessary payments for the administration of its affairs freely, generating overdrafts on the account of the treasurer. This debt did not accumulate interest and granted great flexibility to public finances. Here we see a stylized balance sheet of the institution. On the asset side, around 1/3 were metal coins. The rest, according to law, had to be public debt, as no other person was entitled to receive credit from the institution. However, later we will discuss how the Taula did extend credit to private banks. Historians, by and large, classify the Taula as a public bank, along with other institutions such as the Casa di San Giorgio in Genoa. In general, there is reluctance to label such institutions central banks, but applying a monetary perspective leads to a better understanding of their function within the financial system. The latest systematic study on the matter is Central Banking Before 1800 by Ulrich Binzeil, a compilation on the history of thought on the origins of central banking. His perspective differs from the dominant paradigm, which stipulates that the first central banks appeared in Stockholm and London as a new kind of institution, qualitatively different from continental public banks. According to Binsheil, the emergence of modern central banking is another step in the long European banking tradition. Central banks do not appear out of nowhere, but are the institutional evolution of pre-existing practices in cities such as Genoa, Naples, Venice, Amsterdam, and Hamburg, and of course Barcelona. But what characterizes a central bank? The answer is that its deposits must be the highest quality financial money. Let's see the quote. Central bank money may itself be defined as financial money of the highest possible credit quality, which is accepted for settlement of any other financial claim in the same way as specie money is accepted. That is, it is being considered credit, liquidity, and market risk free, to use modern terminology, and which is significantly used in the economy as a means of payment. The deposits in the Taula were considered money of the highest quality and were widely accepted, therefore meeting the necessary and sufficient condition of Binsheil. The author adds two additional conditions, based more on historical patterns than on monetary theory: that every central bank must have a public charter, and that it must be created in the pursuit of public policy objectives and not as a private business. The Taula fulfills both requirements, and therefore it can be considered the first central bank. The financial relationship between the Taula and private banks can reveal certain similarities between the dynamics of the financial system of medieval Barcelona and modern central banking. First, the fact that private banks had deposits in the Taula is an indication of a hierarchical principle according to which the superior quality of its deposits led bankers to replace part of their metal reserves, real assets, with the liabilities of the Taula, financial assets. Second, and more significantly, the Taula granted credit to banks directly, a precursor to the role of lender of last resort that became an intricate part of central banking. Let's consider the following two historical examples that confirm that the Taula extended its credit to the city's private banks. In 1404, the Gualbes Bank, considered the most active, powerful, and prestigious in Barcelona, went bankrupt after months of having a negative balance in its current account at the Taula. This graph, contained in Feliu's book, shows the amount overdrawn from the Gualbes Bank account as a time series in the period from May the 2nd to November the 10th, 1404. Loans to the Gualbes Bank represents a remarkable example of the Taula very early in its history, extending credit to banks in distress. If it were confirmed that the Taula was the only economic agent willing to give credit to the Gualbes family, this event would be a case of lender of last resort in the most literal way. It is noteworthy that a fundamental function of central banking could appear in its simplest form only 3 years after the establishment of the Taula. The second historical example deals with an episode in which private bankers took advantage of the deposits they had in the Taula to extract coins from it. In 1442, the following case was discussed in the Council of the 100. People who had deposits at the Taula withdrew them in exchange for good quality coins. Then they deposited the coins in private banks. Lastly, the private banks transferred the funds back to the same original people in the Taula. We are told that this was an abusive practice and that the scammers were paying up to 30% commission for this dealing. Therefore, we must rule out the possibility that the private banks were settling the transfer by handing the coins back. Rather, it appears that the Taula allowed private banks to overdraw their accounts as before. Going back to the question of what is a central bank, Binsheil summarizes the characteristics that are usually associated with central banks in the following list: issue of central bank money, based on a public charter, pursuing public policy objectives, convertibility and value stability, increasing the monetary base, public ownership, and lender of last resort. Binsheil concludes that the Naples banking system was the first to have lender of last resort, while the Bank of Hamburg was the first one to have all 7 items. As described in this section, we can say that the Taula engaged in activities similar to lender of last resort by lending to banks, including ones in trouble. This fact shows how fast some central banking practices emerge in history. For further detail, please go to the article, link in the description. There you will find information about other aspects of the Taula related to central banking, such as its part in war finance during the Catalan Civil War in the late 1400s. See you next time.